I'm really curious what you all have to say, and so if you want to leave any questions in the comments that you'd like, or topics of discussion that you'd like for me to talk about, I'm always open to hearing what people have to say and what people want to talk about, because it's always important to get new perspectives and new ideas. And you know, I always try my best to broaden my horizons, but I mean, we all know how life is. Traditional 9 to 5 is sometimes extremely draining, and it's difficult to maintain the focus and the tenacity to move forward, and sometimes you need those little sparks of inspiration. So like, subscribe, add a comment, share this with your friends. It's been really eye-opening and a lot of fun just within these last couple of weeks, just making these videos. I feel it's very freeing. I do highly recommend that people do it themselves, because the more open and authentic that we can be in communication, the closer we'll get as a human family. And I do really feel like, you know, we all are a family. The difficulty lies in the fact that each person holds up things that separate us, and a majority of the time it's because we have such a hard time even accepting ourselves and breaking down our own personal barriers that then separate us from other people and separate us from each other. You can see that extremely well in politics. It's the most beautiful example of, in my eyes personally, how not to be. It's right there. Like, and what's so funny is that with all the things going back and forth on that spectrum, like what's gotten solved, you know what I mean, in the long run. But I will say this, what's funny is that, like, the pen and paper won't solve anything as far as laws are being concerned, but the pen and paper and the emotions will solve things for what go on in your life. Like, you can write these things down and figure out and break down your past, who you are, like where you're going, what you want to achieve, why do you act certain ways. And a majority, like people just don't think about these things. They're I've got too much to do with work, and it's not going to change anything. And take a look at quantum physics and quantum reality and quantum mechanics and just the quantum field theory in general, like, and just where things go. Like, science is starting to affirm a lot more of what the mystics knew to be true. Like, you can tap into a lot of stuff. It's just whether or not you're open-minded to it. I mean, if you go back to when you started school, you got to realize that, like, you were programmed at a young age to just fall in line to a pattern. Like, you have to admit that. Like, if you don't admit that, then you're already you've taken the blue pill. Like, you got to realize that, like, you were forced to take the blue pill when you were a child. Every single one of us was forced to take the blue pill, whether we want to admit it or not. Like, it was only from coming to that realization and then understanding that everything that you were taught was taught from a system that was flawed. So there is a system, though, that's innate within you that knew of the flaw before it ever came into existence. Like, that innate system is within you. You can tap into that system every single time, and boom, you just know. Like if a child sees an animal die, right, and for the first time experiences, in a sense, quote unquote, death, and it doesn't have to be a murder, it's just death in general, they feel the pain of that. It could be their dog, their cat, like, it could be one of their grandparents. Like, they innately know that, in a sense, like death doesn't feel good. It's not, it hurts. You know, like, it hurts. Now, that doesn't mean that, like, that they can't grow from that. It doesn't mean that, like, We all know that it happens, but there still is something beyond that. You know, there's something beyond that pain. And we didn't have to like be told why does it hurt. We just knew. You know what I mean? It's those innate knowings of life and the way things work. Those innate knowings we need to bring back. Like, we need to not deny it. We need to speak the truth. We need to not like be ashamed of who we are, the things that we love doing, and if we're coming from a good, open-minded, open-hearted, loving place, then there's no harm in speaking. You know, like that's always been the biggest thing for me, is that like people are afraid to speak nowadays. Like, they're afraid to say something because they want to be so PC and they don't want to offend people. Yet they'll go and vote for somebody who, you know, like will say one thing one time and then are conflicted and confronted on another, and they won't own up to it. Like we allow so much to happen in our day-to-day lives that we don't take and own up to. Like, I myself included, like, I'm not exempt from this in anything I say. Like, anything I say can be thrown right back at me, and should. Like, what I'm grateful for is that I keep learning these new things. I keep learning that it's not easy. I keep learning that, you know, the more that I try to connect with myself, the more that I try to connect with other people, the more that I try to connect with God, the more that I try to connect with just like all of it, it all seems to work out really, really well. Like, I mean, we live on a beautiful planet. Like, it's all about how you go about it. Like no matter what the situation is, there are great things that can come about it. Like, just what perspective are you coming from? Like, how are you going to do your day? Like, how are you going to move forward in your life? Like, it doesn't matter like what your achievements are, what awards you've won, like how much money you have in the bank. Like, none of that shit matters. Yet, like, we're fed it every single freaking day. Like, this is how life should be. White picket fence, you know, 2 cars, wife and kids, money in the bank, like, blah, blah, blah. You know, yada, yada, yada. Like, and it hurts my soul, man. Like, because I fall trapped to it. Like, I fall trapped to it. And I still do from time to time. And it irks me so much because I'm like, oh, I know that shit ain't true. I know that stuff don't matter. Damn, why am I still trapped by it? And it's fear-based. It's all fear-based. Like, it's all expectation-based. It's all stuff that's been taught. It's all blue pill programming. It's all, this is what you were told, and then because this is what you were told, we're going to just reaffirm it. And if you step out of line, we're going to punish you for it. If you go against the grain, we're going to punish you for it. If you say anything outside or opposing the viewpoints, we're going to punish you for it. Like, it's all about punishment and fear. And until people really grasp that and understand that, they're going to keep repeating the same cycle, myself included. And every time I do repeat that same cycle, I have to open up my head and I have to acknowledge, I just did it again. Crap. And I mean, when they say ignorance is bliss, it really isn't. Because the freedom comes from knowing. And the freedom comes from, like, knowing that you can wipe the slate clean. And you can move forward from a totally different perspective, a totally different paradigm, and not be bound by this. Like, it's I'm really grateful and I'm really appreciative of my family, of my really close friends, of my newer friends that I've formed relationships with, of my coworkers, of, you know, my colleagues in in the entertainment industry, of my friends in the entertainment industry, of my friends in all industries, like, because each one of these people in my life have opened me up into a new way, into a new perspective, and also have confronted me on my old paradigms and beliefs. Each one of them. Now, that's really, really huge, because I continue to change. Like, I don't just stay stuck in one way of thinking. Like, I'll always be flooded with just so many people that if I were to stay stuck in one way of thinking, I wouldn't be having new people come into my life. Like, it just wouldn't happen. I would just be surrounded by the same people. Like, one of the biggest things that always amazes me is that when I go back home and I meet up with my old close friends, like the just childhood friends that just I've spoken to you about them before, you know, my moths. Like, we always end up reconnecting and pretty much being on the exact same wavelength, and if not ahead of each other than we were before. Like, and we're doing the same thing. Like, and I don't mean like we're doing the same thing. Like, I mean like we've grown together on the same wavelength. We'll talk about a topic and a subject, and we'll be on the same page. We've researched the same thing. We've made the same progressions. We've processed the same emotions. We've broken down childhood traumas. We've acknowledged our mistakes of the past to then to make better our future. Like, there's such a spiritual, like, brotherly growth between my close-knit friends that, like, I feel so blessed that, like, that they are my brothers, and that like they'll call me out on stuff too. Like, they'll just totally, like, sit me down and be like, yo, J-Moff, straighten up, wise up. You really think that's true? Check this out, dude. Nope. Bam. Like, and, you know, I get shotgun hit in the face, like, just with a fist, just bow. Figuratively, not like literally. Like, if T-Moff hit me in the face, like, my jaw would just totally bust open, and, like, my teeth would be through the floor, and, you know, Greg Miff would just be in the corner laughing, and Max would be like, oh, like, so it's a trip. But, like, it's a spiritual gut check. Like, all of us, like, we keep each other on point. Like, we call each other out on stuff, and it's important. You gotta have people in your circle, like, that quite literally you can't get away with murder with. Figuratively, again. Like, you have to have people that will call you out, and you have to have people that will, like, confront you, because those confronting emotions, that's where the battle is. Like, that's where you have to realize that, like, hey, and it's not about yelling or fighting. Like, I want to be clear about that. Like, if you've got anger and you've got to fight, like, there are places to take that anger out in. Like, one is just martial arts, like the boxing or like kickboxing, like hitting a heavy bag, like doing a martial arts class. It's a great way to channel your anger. I do highly recommend that, because you got to get through the anger to then tap into what the fear is and what the grief and the sadness are. Because, like, anger is just covering up fear, grief, and sadness. Like, it's all it ever does. It's all anger ever does. Once you start accepting and acknowledging that, like, you can then process the fear, process the grief, and process the sadness. It's hard. It's hard, though, because what it does is it shows that you're not a perfect being. You know, like, you feel its weakness, like, innately, especially men. Like, men, like, I don't think so these days. Like, a lot of, like, really, really strong men I've noticed that are, like, physically strong too, are so able to tap into their emotions. And that, for me, is, like, that's such a sign that, like, that we're progressing, like, in a great way. Because for years, generations of men would never tap into their emotions, would never show the, quote, sign of weakness. But again, what's funny is art kind of, like, led that to be acceptable. You know, like, you can kind of look at television and film now, and you can see these different spectrums now of what's, quote, acceptable by society. And who were the first people to really do it? It were the artists. The artists were the ones that were the first people to really do it, because it went into the mass collective soul consciousness. Like, it went into, you know, the soul condition of, like, what's acceptable within society, you know. And it's funny is that, like, these paradigms then do get broken down through art. Like, look at all of those structures, whether it be athletics, whether it be film, music. There are people who then are pushed by the systems that are there as being at the forefront. There are people that are the mass-produced versions of those systems at the forefront that then create the overall paradigm of like what the goal is to attain if you were to go through it. Then you see the influence of each one of those artists or each one of those athletes, and then again you start looking at where does that correlate within the overall world to then the individual to then the different like just geographical locations. Like, you can see all these things like in that structure if you look at it, and you can see where the motivation and where the formula went. Like, you can, it's really freaking easy. And when people can't do it, it's frustrating for me, because I sometimes don't have the ability to really truly articulate it the way that it is, because I just see the picture. Like, I see it overall. And it's just kind of like with Tesla. Like, whenever he would see his creations, he always said that he saw the creation as a whole. He saw the equation as a whole. He would dream and visualize and see it as a whole. He didn't see it bit by bit to it being there. He just saw it. He was like, oh, this is what it is. And then he would build it, and then it would either work or it wouldn't work. And then he would go back and he would realize where the mistake was made, but he would see that mistake as a whole. He wouldn't see that mistake as like an individual fraction or a piece then put into it. So it's the same thing with industry. Like, each industry has people that they put at the top, but then within those industries there are trailblazers that people don't know of, that have really taken the art or taken it and fully expressed it to its infinite, or to the infinite within themselves. Like, has fully tapped into what it can do. And like, and that's why it's such a, like, art in general is such a beautiful medium, because the expression of it is still always so individually based, and that expression can then inspire hundreds of millions of people. Like, just, it all just depends on how it is given and how it goes out to people. Like, music being in such an amazing thing, because like we all, like, I don't know of one person that doesn't love music. I mean, I personally, I don't. You may, but everybody loves music. Everybody eventually taps their foot to it. Everybody eventually moves to it. Like, everybody, whether they're good at dancing or not, will do their own sort of like interpretation, a feeling of the music. Like, everybody does it. So there's this uniform truth on like life of certain things. I mean, it's a beautiful existence that we have, and if we take it for granted, you know, we're never going to grow. If we take it for granted, we're never going to learn. Like, I've been having some hard situations lately, because just like life has been throwing at me some things where it's like, here you go, what are you gonna do? And I've had to process a lot of fear around it, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's scary. Like, it's extremely scary. But I know that if I don't do it, it's never going to get done, right? And on that same note, like, as I do these things, I not only do these things for myself because I know my life will be better because of it. I also do these things because I know that if I can eventually find the strength to talk about it, if I can eventually find the strength to bring it to an audience, to bring it to people, that so many people will benefit from it. And not in a like, oh, wow, you know, like, thank you, Jordan, this is amazing, you're amazing. Like, no. Like, just like in people who I find inspirational, like in people that I look up to, I realize they're just like everybody else. And what's funny is that when you interact with somebody that inspires you or has inspired you, and you come to that understanding that They're just like you, and they go through the same pains, the same trials, the same tribulations. And then what they went through to get to where they are as a person, not as an achievement, as a person, just living day to day, just waking up, doing their day, going to sleep, doing it over again. And you come to really love that person. And there's a relationship that's understood between the two of you on that level. Like all bets are off in a sense. Like every it's like, oh shit, wow. Like there's a level of understanding that comes from the struggle that only those who have gone through it can really resonate with it. And I don't mean like gone through it on like everybody's got struggles. Everybody's got struggles. It's not about comparing which ones are worse. It's about like the process in which you went through it. Because some people can't get through it. You know what I mean? Whether it be of a physical demanding nature or what. Like some people just like they can't. You know, like, and just acknowledging those things, like acknowledging what you can and cannot do, like realize, but aiming to try to get through it, like working to get through it, working to progress, working to move forward, not working to stay stagnant, not working to live into the past, not working for, I just want things to just be the way they always were. No, you want things to be better, okay? You don't want things to be the way they always were. You want things to grow better, grow larger, grow more abundant, grow towards, the betterment of yourself and humanity. You want things to be better for everyone. And that is possible. When people say it's not possible, the universe is too freaking huge for it not to be possible. There's too much good stuff going on for it not to be possible. It's all dependent upon whether or not you work through your shit. Like, it does come down to that, because everybody I know that has an abundant life, they've worked through a lot of shit. Some of them were born into it and it was given to them. And those, you see that shit get broken down though. Whenever they don't work through their shit, you see them fall apart from a distance. And it hurts, because sometimes you try to intervene and you try to help them, and they may have a better life than you. Like, as far as, again, the societal aspect of what a good life looks like, you know what I mean? X amount of money in the bank, X amount of homes, X amount of toys, like all that shit. But they don't have the interconnection that you have, because you've gone through the work. So what do? You try to aid in getting them, because you can't do the work for them. You try to give them little hints of little tools, little things to kind of, hey, maybe, why don't you try this? And what's it like for you when this, and you break the shit down to them in whatever way or whatever language they speak. And I mean emotional language. I don't mean like Paul Fonse or, Hajime Mashite Namae wa Jordan desu. Hi, say Jordan. Like any, like, not in language, but like in the language of the person's mind. Because each person speaks completely different in how you interact with them. Like, the way I interact with people back in my hometown is completely different than the way that I interact with people here in LA versus the way that I interact with people on set versus the way that I interact with people in an interview versus the way I interact with people here. Ideally, I want to interact with people the way that I interact with them here, because it's me being of a truest expression of myself, of sound, body, and mind. Like, that's the end all overall goal. The only time that doesn't really happen is when I'm being, self-conscious within myself, and like, in a sense, I'm lying to myself, and that's never good. It's frustrating, to be honest. Because then I realize that I'm trapped again in the paradigm, and I have more work I have to do. So, like on this progression, on this path of growing, I know not to take myself so seriously. And when I speak this way and when I talk like this, you gotta know I'm not really taking myself so seriously. What I'm doing is I'm speaking passionately, because I see the importance of growing and doing the work. And And the work isn't always simple. The process is simple. The work towards the process isn't always simple. In fact, it's hard, because these restrictions that we put upon ourselves, these limitations that we put upon ourselves, are what hinder us, or what make us go back into our thinking to second guess ourselves. And when we second guess ourselves, like, the entire thing falls apart, you know? Reflection shouldn't be second guessing. Reflection is just reflecting upon to see an overall image, right? Upon further reflection, you may see something differently, but don't get down on yourself for changing those aspects within yourself. Don't get down on yourself for the way that your life led you up to now. Excuse me. And with that, if you like the video, like, subscribe, share with friends, post comments. Like, this is an open forum now. I'm just trying to be more open, authentic, and real with everybody. I think it's important that we do this in 2020 and everybody get closer together. So peace, love, and happiness, everybody, and till next time.